Taylor Swift named her album the Tortured Poets Department, becoming the self-proclaimed chairman to this club. So naturally, this conceptual promise made people expect her best penmanship yet, only to end up disappointed by cheap Lana Del Rey knockoff lyrics. Lyrics that came across as forced, unnatural, and just a desperate aim to appeal to Gen Z and their TikTok-born fascination with 2014 Tumblr quotes. Taylor is trying to jump on the indie or alternative bandwagon, replicating what her peers have done 10 years ago, and it's just so hard to believe it comes from a genuine place. At this stage of her life and the status of her superstar career, her fans argue her net worth, jet usage and age shouldn't play a role in the conversation about her music, but it's her real life. Isn't her real life the basis of her entire work, the very substance of her music? Or is it just certain aspects that should come into play, specifically those who benefit and enrich her without tarnishing her image? Like bringing up her ex-boyfriend's struggle with mental health and antidepressants dependence for her cultish fandom to discuss. This has been a thing with Swift. She wants to have it all, yet face zero repercussions. She wants to be very specific about her love life and her enemies. She wants to include even children in her vindictive narratives. But it's her own morality and questionable politics that should be most definitely out of question. She will lose her cool and start cussing her fans out when they call her out on white feminist performativism and platforming a problematic, racist, misogynistic man. A problematic, racist man whom she dedicated lovey-dovey songs on an album that rips off said man's band whole aesthetic and sound. She wants to be perceived as alternative, like an outcast, while simultaneously embodying the system's whole facade. Taylor is the child of wealth, power, and privilege. And there's nothing wrong with that. But her obsession with cosplaying as the underdog is narcissistic, egotistical, and insulting to those who are factually underprivileged. And the people who partake in this circus of coddling a grown woman's delusions of victimhood. They're just like any 13-year-old Elon Musk fanboy, trying to convince themselves, yes, the white son of an apartheid lord, he's a born genius I can relate to and could totally aspire to become. Taylor Swift wasn't raised on an asylum, not physically, and most definitely, not metaphorically. She had an extremely smooth entrance in the industry. Her above-average rich, fourth-generation bank president parent could pay for her music lessons while driving her out of town to look out options to get her signed. Her parents moved into another city, from mansion to mansion, just so she could start her new musical pursuits. She was indeed so privileged that she could simply say no to the first label that signed her, which wasn't centering her enough. Taylor's father Scott just bought her way into a new deal with another up-and-coming label where Tay-Tay could be the main and only star. $300,000 spare change for this extra move did the Swift family have, which is also the reason why the subsequent Scooter Braun debacle was so ridiculous and dishonest. She was 15 signing a contract that took advantage of her, under whose label? Her own father's. He was directly involved. She was never unaware. She even later admitted to this as well. Yet in between her gimmicks for sympathy, she felt the need to declare herself a helpless little victim, which she just wasn't. She had always been, not only protected and guided, but literally spoiled and coddled. Her immense privilege then led her to believe nobody could or should ever go against her wishes, and the world's systems, laws and contracts have to bend over at her command, and according to her sentiments. She is an undisputed narcissist with a kink for pity parties, and that narcissism permeates her whole body of work. Her music is entirely self-centered and self-serving. The lore of her personal life is elevated and knitted together into this sort of Marvel Cinematic Universe type of web, within which she might occasionally drop the legends, myths, and demigods references to further her extraordinary self-perception. Granted, she's a billionaire pop star. Her life is interesting, certainly much more than that of a common middle-aged white woman. But still, this type of self-indulgence in the pluridimensional landscape of her own public persona is rather uncommon even among the big, usually just as self-absorbed pop stars. Her and her parasocially fed fans populate a Swift theme park, where all her music is located. It's the Easter eggs, those references to that one specific item of clothing she was wearing. That's what the so-called magic and genius of her work is to be made out. Her life circumstances, the self-importance, and grandiosity of who she is, a spectacle of self-insert slides. Good art is universal. Of course, particular experience and situations, they're always summoned and evoked. But the overarching feeling or theme or sentiment, that should transcend individuality, that's what's key. To grant the universal and properly artistic appeal, there's reason you can't be a casual Swiftie. It's just a cult of personality, a giant ego fest. And the worst part, and the more demoralizing one, is the reason as to why this fest is attractive for anyone that's not Swift herself. And it's raising a generation of self-absorbed, cynically self-indulgent, pseudo-intellectuals that pretend the world revolves around them. The relatability with someone like Swift at this stage. It just means a vicariously enjoyed power fantasy, where the middle America-born Karen is able to relish and conquer a fascist empire of white feminist privilege, pearl-clutching at the face of any type of criticism, finger-pointing at anyone, especially minorities, who dare come at odds with the true, worthy victims of this world. The suburb-born and raised American with a thesaurus in hand, ready to call themselves a member of a poet's clan, whose values end and start with me.